In the spring of 1982, inside a gray research institute on the outskirts of Novosibirsk, a Soviet physicist named Dr. Anton Lebedev made a discovery he should never have made. He was a quiet man, known for his brilliance and caution, someone who avoided unnecessary attention. Yet even he could not fully grasp the danger his work had created. Lebedev was assigned to a classified project under the Siberian branch of the Academy of Sciences. Officially, the institute researched high-energy plasma. Unofficially, it supported a secret military program known as Vector 7. Its purpose was ambitious: to develop a compact plasma-based energy source that, if stabilized, could power advanced surveillance systems, high-altitude drones, or even electromagnetic disruption devices capable of disabling enemy electronics. Most of the experiments produced nothing useful. The models failed, the plasma instabilities grew uncontrollable, and the military lost interest. But one night, during a series of after-hours tests conducted when the lab was nearly empty, Lebedev witnessed something unexpected: a brief energy spike far beyond projected limits. It lasted less than a second, but the readings were undeniable. If harnessed, this effect could cripple electronic systems across a wide radius. Lebedev stared at the printout, terrified. He wasn't a soldier. The implications were clear and disturbing. A weapon like this could shift the balance of the Cold War. He tried to hide the results: altered logs, incomplete reports, missing data files. But such things never went unnoticed inside a Soviet military research facility. Within days, the KGB's Scientific Technical Directorate received an anonymous report about unusual activity in the Vector 7 laboratory. Someone suspected Lebedev was withholding classified results. A KGB investigator was assigned to quietly monitor him. Yet what the Soviets didn't know was that the CIA had already taken interest in Lebedev. Months earlier, a fragment of his early plasma research had been intercepted through a compromised academic correspondence channel. At first, American analysts didn't see its value. Later, rumors about a secret Soviet plasma weapon project began circulating through Eastern European intelligence networks, and Lebedev's name resurfaced. Then, in March 1982, a dormant CIA asset in Moscow sent a single sentence through an encrypted channel: "Lebedev has discovered something the KGB cannot control." That message was enough to trigger emergency activity inside the CIA. If a Soviet scientist was in conflict with his own government and possessed potentially game-changing military technology, the agency wanted him before the KGB buried him. In Novosibirsk, Lebedev soon sensed that something was wrong. A black Volga began appearing near his apartment building. His lab access was suddenly restricted. Conversations among colleagues fell silent when he approached. And one evening, he found a thin mark of black ink inside his notebook cover, a subtle but unmistakable indication that the KGB had opened it. He understood the truth. Both sides were now watching him. The KGB wanted to silence him. The CIA wanted to extract him, and he wanted neither. But escaping the Soviet Union was nearly impossible. The real story began the night Lebedev made a choice he could never reverse. On April 17, 1982, at 2:14 in the morning, the security cameras at the Novosibirsk Research Institute recorded something unusual. Dr. Anton Lebedev entered the building alone, carrying a canvas bag and moving with a tense, deliberate purpose. He walked straight to Laboratory 3, the restricted wing housing the Vector 7 experimental chamber. 30 minutes later, he walked out with the same bag, now visibly heavier. The night guards did not stop him. Senior scientists often came and went at odd hours. But when the morning shift arrived and opened the laboratory, they discovered that several key components of the Vector 7 prototype were missing. Not enough to recreate the device, but enough to understand it. The KGB was notified immediately. A regional investigative team arrived before noon. They interviewed guards, inspected security logs, searched Lebedev's apartment, and sealed off the laboratory. The results were alarming. Lebedev was gone. His apartment was stripped of personal belongings. His passport and internal documents were missing. His clothes, books, even family photographs had disappeared. It looked less like a scientist fleeing and more like a man erasing himself from his own life. The KGB's working theory was that Lebedev intended to defect. For the Soviet Union, this was more than treason. A scientist carrying partial designs for an experimental electromagnetic weapon posed a grave national security threat. If the Americans obtained that knowledge, decades of Soviet research and billions of rubles in military investment could be compromised. But the KGB did not know that the CIA had received a signal 2 weeks earlier. Coded note from an underground courier in Vienna saying, "Lebedev requests contact, urgent, whether Lebedev truly sent that message remained unclear. But for the CIA, the timing was too much to ignore. They prepared an emergency extraction plan in case the physicist tried to escape the USSR. When news of his disappearance reached the CIA's Moscow station through back channels, it confirmed their fear. Lebedev was on the run, but they still didn't know where he was going. Meanwhile, the KGB launched one of the largest regional manhunts Siberia had ever seen. Roadblocks appeared across Novosibirsk, Omsk, and Tomsk. Trains were searched. Airports checked passenger lists with unusual intensity. Surveillance teams questioned ticket clerks, hotel staff, and taxi drivers. One clerk at the Novosibirsk railway station reported something interesting. A man matching Lebedev's description had purchased a ticket to Omsk under a false name, but he never boarded the train. The KGB realized they were dealing with a scientist who understood their methods and planned accordingly, which meant the hunt would not be simple. Lebedev had anticipated the KGB's tactics. Instead of taking the train, he paid a truck driver to smuggle him west under a pile of farming equipment. For hours he lay there motionless as the truck rattled along icy roads. Every time it slowed, he held his breath, waiting for the sound of dogs or soldiers. But the truck was never stopped. 2 days later, outside a small Tyumen village, Lebedev slipped into the forest. He followed a series of old service roads he remembered from a research expedition years earlier. His destination was a remote meteorological station, a forgotten building rarely visited, with no electricity and no official presence. It was perfect for hiding. As night fell, Lebedev lit a small kerosene lamp and spread his stolen components across the floor. He examined them with shaking hands. The deeper he looked, the more he regretted everything. If the KGB caught him, he would disappear into an interrogation cell. If the CIA caught him, he would become an asset, a tool for someone else's agenda. He wondered which fate was worse. Then, near midnight, he heard the sound of branches breaking outside. Not the quick, irregular movement of an animal, but the slow, sweeping pattern of someone trained to move quietly. Lebedev extinguished the lamp, heart racing. Footsteps approached the station. A flashlight beam swept across the window. Lebedev held his breath as the door creaked open. A calm voice, speaking Russian with a faint foreign accent, said, "Dr. Lebedev, do not be afraid. We are here to help you." It wasn't the KGB. It was the CIA. For a long moment, Lebedev said nothing. The man in the doorway stood calmly, his hands visible, his posture relaxed. Nothing about him suggested aggression, yet everything about the situation screamed danger. "My name is Michael Turner," the man said. "United States Central Intelligence Agency." Lebedev stepped back instinctively. He had expected the KGB. He had even prepared himself for the possibility of a military arrest team. But the CIA appearing at an abandoned Soviet weather station was something no scenario in his mind had anticipated. "I did not ask for you," Lebedev said, keeping his voice low. Turner nodded as if he expected that answer. "Someone reached out on your behalf, someone who believed your life was in immediate danger." Lebedev swallowed hard. "Who?" "We don't know," Turner replied. "What matters now is that both of our intelligence services know you're missing. The KGB is already narrowing their search perimeter. If they find you, they will silence you. We are offering another option." Lebedev stared at the CIA officer, unsure whether to trust him or run into the forest. "What do you want from me?" he asked. Turner shook his head. "Right now? Nothing except your cooperation. We are here to extract you before the KGB does." A distant rumble of an engine echoed through the trees. Turner instantly switched off his flashlight and raised a hand. 2 shadows outside the hut responded with silent signals. Lebedev realized these were extraction agents. They moved with frightening precision. "That is not our vehicle," Turner whispered. "We have to leave, now." Before Lebedev could protest, Turner guided him through the back of the station and into the forest. A hidden van waited among the pines. It was an old Soviet cargo vehicle, dirty, dented, and nearly invisible in the dark. Inside was a compartment with blankets, water, and a small radio tuned to military frequencies. As soon as the door shut, the van rolled silently across the frost-covered terrain. Turner sat across from Lebedev, studying him. "We need to know what you took and why." Lebedev clutched the canvas bag tightly. He inhaled sharply, gathering the courage to speak. "It is part of an experimental system," he said. "Vector 7, a plasma formation, capable of producing an electromagnetic disruption, strong enough to disable electronics." Turner's reaction was subtle, but unmistakable. A slight widening of the eyes, a hint of realization. "How far along was the project?" he asked. "Too far," Lebedev said. "The military wants to weaponize it." I tried to slow them down. They started watching me, so I ran. Turner leaned back silently. The CIA had chased rumors of such technology for years. If the Soviets truly had a prototype capable of producing electromagnetic effects, it could threaten Western aircraft, communications, and early satellite systems. And now the only man who understood it was sitting in their van, clutching a bag full of secrets. But the KGB was moving faster than they anticipated. Hours later, a Soviet patrol found the abandoned meteorological station and the tracks of multiple individuals leading into the forest. They radioed the discovery. In response, the KGB widened the search radius and deployed additional teams. The manhunt shifted from routine surveillance to full operational mode. Meanwhile, Turner and the extraction team transported Lebedev to a CIA safe house near Ishim. It looked like a dilapidated farmhouse, the kind locals abandoned during harsh winters. But beneath the rotting floorboards was a functioning radio system, medical supplies, and an escape tunnel. Lebedev slept for less than 2 hours before Turner woke him. "We have a complication," he said. "The KGB knows you did not leave alone. They believe you're traveling with foreign operatives." Lebedev rubbed his eyes. "How do they know?" Turner hesitated. "We think there's a leak. Either someone in your institute or someone who saw you leaving the station. Or, Lebedev thought, someone inside the CIA. Turner unfolded a map. Circles in red pencil marked KGB checkpoints and patrol zones. The Soviet search perimeter was tightening rapidly. "If we don't reach the Kazakh border today," Turner said, "we lose your window of escape." Lebedev stared at the map. The border crossing he once considered using, the one he memorized years earlier, was now covered with guards and dogs. The CIA's alternative was more dangerous. An abandoned inspection corridor from the 1960s, partially dismantled, known only to a few outdated intelligence files. Before they could finalize the route, the farmhouse radio crackled alive with a coded transmission. Turner's face hardened as he translated the intercepted message. "Target traveling with foreign agents. Authorized to intercept by any means." Lebedev's blood ran cold. Turner folded the map and locked eyes with him. "They're coming here." The farmhouse grew silent, except for the sound of snow crunching. Beneath their boots, the KGB's order, capture or neutralize, hung over them. Lebedev watched Turner and the CIA team prepare, loading concealed weapons, checking radios and folding maps. Fear mixed with exhaustion. The scientist had never imagined that his research could make him a target in a life-or-death chase. "How long do we have?" Lebedev asked, his voice trembling. Turner glanced at a watch. "If the nearest patrol keeps pace, 20 minutes. Maybe less." The original plan was now useless. KGB roadblocks and checkpoints blocked all major routes. Even back roads and old smuggling paths were under surveillance. Turner spread an old, worn map on the floor, edges torn, marked with handwritten notes. "This is our only way," he said. "Through a path they stopped using decades ago." Lebedev studied the route. It led through a desolate stretch near the Kazakhstan border, swamps, ruined collective farms, abandoned military sites. The fence here had been partially dismantled in the 1960s and left to decay. "Why isn't this area patrolled?" Lebedev asked. Turner smiled faintly. "Because on paper it doesn't exist." Within minutes, they loaded their belongings into a rusted Soviet truck. It blended perfectly with the landscape, nothing to attract attention. The team drove for hours through empty fields, past abandoned barns and frozen rivers, until they reached the edge of the forgotten border region. There lay the remnants of an old railway line, covered in snow, with gaps in the fence large enough to slip through. "This is it," Turner said. "We go on foot from here." The forest was silent, suffocating. Every step into the trees was cautious. Lebedev's pulse raced with each crack of a branch. After half an hour, they reached the border fence, or what remained of it. Rusted metal bent into jagged angles, partially collapsed. It seemed almost too easy to pass. Turner scanned the area with a small infrared scope. "No heat signatures. We move one at a time. Fast." Lebedev was first. He pushed aside the fence and slipped through. For a fleeting moment, freedom hit him like a shockwave. For the first time in his life, he was outside the Soviet Union, undocumented, invisible and untraceable. The others followed. Turner was last. Then, a distant engine roared. Lights swept the frozen field. The KGB had found them. Somehow the border they counted as abandoned was under observation. "Run!" Turner shouted. The team sprinted toward the drainage canal near the river, marking the actual border. Snow exploded beneath their feet as bullets cracked the air. Lebedev stumbled, but Turner grabbed him, pulling him forward. Behind them, the KGB officers closed in, shouting, firing. They slid into the canal, its icy water numbing their limbs. Turner looked back. The Soviet patrols spread out, but the natural curve of the river gave them cover. If they could reach the other side, the crossing would create an international incident if the KGB pursued. Lebedev, soaked and exhausted, realized the truth of Turner's earlier words. The KGB would not hesitate to kill him. Survival depended not on science, luck, or skill, but on running faster than the men with orders to eliminate him. Somewhere ahead, the river marked salvation. Behind them, Soviet justice pursued mercilessly. Lebedev struggled through the freezing canal water, each step threatening to pull him under. His lungs burned, and his fingers were numb. But Turner kept a firm grip on him, urging him forward. Behind them, the KGB was relentless, firing intermittently, shouting orders that cut through the winter air. The night had become a blur of snow, bullets, and fear. The canal led to a dense line of trees marking the border river. Turner signaled for the team to split, a tactic designed to confuse the pursuers. Lebedev ran alongside an older agent, using fallen branches and natural cover to stay out of sight. Every snap of a twig made his heart skip. Every shadow seemed like a soldier waiting to drag him back into Soviet control. Finally, they reached the far side of the river. The current was shallow enough to cross quickly, though the ice cracked under their weight. Lebedev slipped and nearly fell, but Turner yanked him up. One last sprint across the frozen expanse, and they were on the Kazakh side, their extraction point just a few hundred meters ahead. Behind them, shouts faded as the KGB paused at the canal, unwilling to risk a border incident. The crossing was technically international territory. The Soviets could not fire without consequences. Lebedev exhaled a shaky breath for the first time in 3 days. He was alive. The CIA team guided him to a waiting vehicle, an unmarked Soviet truck that blended into the local landscape. Inside, a small heater pushed warmth through the cabin. Lebedev sank into the seat, exhausted, shaking. He realized the magnitude of what had just happened. The KGB, the CIA, the stolen research. It all had been a gamble that could have ended with his death. Or worse, disappearance without a trace. Turner leaned over. "You did well, but your life is changing forever. They will never forget you. The Soviets will consider you a traitor. And the CIA? Well, you're an asset now." Lebedev nodded, too tired to argue. In his bag were the notes, prototypes, and storage reels that could redefine modern electronics or military defense. But he also carried something else, a survival instinct honed under pressure, knowledge that even the most powerful governments had cracks. Over the next weeks, the CIA moved Lebedev to safe locations, constantly changing his identity and residence. In Langley, analysts pored over his research, evaluating its potential. For Lebedev, it was a strange mix of relief and disorientation, free from Soviet control, yet tied to a life he did not choose. Months later, declassified files revealed glimpses of his disappearance. Soviet reports described a scientist missing under suspicious circumstances with secret components, unaccounted for. Internal documents suggested a manhunt that cost millions, but nothing definitive was recorded. Lebedev's fate remained uncertain to the outside world. In private, Lebedev continued his work, but differently. Freed from the constraints of the Soviet military, he focused on theoretical physics, energy studies, and controlled experiments. His contributions shaped future research programs. Though his name remained largely unknown, he had escaped the KGB, eluded death, and survived the Cold War's shadow games. For the CIA, securing him was a rare intelligence victory. A scientist who could have been lost, captured, or killed became a living source of knowledge. But for Lebedev, the lesson was clear. Intelligence, power, and science were inseparable from danger. One wrong step could mean the end, whether in the Siberian snow or in the corridors of Moscow's secret services. And as he looked out at a quiet, foreign skyline months later, Lebedev realized something else. He would never again walk in a world where his mind, his research, and even his life could belong entirely to himself. The Cold War had claimed him, but in a way, it had also given him a new beginning. A chance to exist in the shadow of empires, but alive. The hunt was over. The story, however, would continue in whispers, in classified files, and in the minds of those who knew what a single scientist could change.